Okay, this is 8th grade pre-algebra 2.1, chapter 2. It's page 57 in your book. I'll try to remind you to write the key concepts. Remember, you have 3 parts. You have the vocabulary, the guided practice, and the key concept when we have those in the boxes. And some lessons don't have key concepts, and 2.1 doesn't, but I still want you to follow along in your book as I'm going over these. There's a lot of stuff to cover in this chapter. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the key vocabulary, which, as soon as I get my pen going here, the key vocabulary, which we write them in 2-column notes like this. Integers. Integers is on page 57, and integers is a set of numbers. It's a set of numbers that are the positives and the negatives. So I'm just going to go ahead and write an example. I'm going to go dot, 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 meaning it goes that way forever, just like the book does. Those are commas, if you can't tell. However far it'll let me go. 1, 2, and dot, dot, dot. So you'll notice we have positive numbers and we have negative numbers. So let's talk about the negative integers. The negative integers are the numbers less than 0, and the positive integers are numbers greater than 0. And you'll notice it's less than 0 and greater than 0, so therefore 0 is not included in there. You'll notice on the number line that they have there's 0, 1, 2, and so forth. This goes -1, -2, just like the number line I have in the front of the room. You will see that these are the negative numbers go this way, the positive numbers go this way, and right smack in the middle is a 0. 0 is, I call it neutral. It's in the middle. It's not negative nor positive. It's just 0. Absolute value. Absolute value is a concept that is covered on the top of page 58. And what absolute value is absolute value is the distance, find my pen again, the distance a number is from 0. Distance is never a negative number. So if I ask you how far is -2 from 0, the absolute value of -2 would just be 2. Absolute value is shown with 2 straight lines. They almost look like brackets or parentheses, but they're 2 straight lines. So that right there would say what is the absolute value of -2, which would be 2. Absolute value, the distance a number is from 0, and it's never negative. So you can kind of think, if you look at that number, how many steps would it take to get to 0? -2 would take 2 steps. What's the absolute value of 100? Of positive 100. I can find my pen here. What's the absolute value of 100? 100 would be 100, because it's 100 steps away from 0. What's the absolute value of -100? 100, because it's 100 steps. Even though they're on the other side of the 0, it's still 100 steps away. And the last one is opposites. I'm going to have to slide that down here. I'm going to do opposites as an example. The opposites have the same number but different signs. 3 and -3. Those are opposites of each other. 4 and -4. 5 and -5. And if you look, another way to define opposites is they have the same absolute value. What's the absolute value of 3? 3. What's the absolute value of -3? 3. So they have the same absolute value. All right, there's our vocabulary for this. Let's go through some examples. See if I can get my pen to work. Okay, example number 1. Graphing and ordering, and this is on the bottom of page 57, and actually it kind of goes to the top if you're following along with me. The Global Positioning System, GPS, can be used to determine elevations. The table shows the lowest elevations in several countries. which country in the table has the lowest elevation? So they give us these elevations. United States has an elevation of -86, Canada 0, China -154, Bolivia 90, and the Czech Republic 115. So we look at the next slide, and what we've done is we have taken and we have put all of those numbers onto a number line. This is sea level. Sea level is at 0. Above sea level are positive elevations. Below sea level are negative elevations. So you can see right here that if we match these up, -154 was China, -86 was the US, 0 was Canada, +90 was Bolivia, and the Czech Republic was the other one. All right, so the question said, which country had the lowest elevation? The lowest would be the farthest one to the left, meaning the one that has the smallest number. In that case, it would be China. 154, sometimes people think that's a big number, but since it has the negative on it, it is smaller. And I think of a lot of times as negatives as owing money, and owing $154 is way more than owing 86 or having a +90. So China is the answer to example number 1. So we go for the guided practice. Order the integers from least to greatest. So we start looking at these, and what we want to do is start with the one that's worth the least, and there's a couple of ways to do it. You can think of them like money, and that's what I do a lot, is I will go, all right, this is like money. This is like owing $7. This is like owing $1, owing $2. That's just flat 0, and this is like having $2 in your pocket. So owing is smaller than, I mean, if you owe somebody, you don't have that money, so that would be the least. So -7 would be you owe the most, then -2, then -1, then 0, then 2. Those numbers are in order from least to greatest. Another way to do that is to take and plot those numbers. I'm going to do a number line by 2s. See if I can get them all in here. I'll do a number line by 2s, and I'm going to plot the numbers. -7 is right there. +2 is right there. -1 is right there. 0 is right there. And -2 is right there. So by plotting them on a number line, I've put them in order, and now I can see the one that's farthest to the left is -7. Then the next is -2, -1, 0, and 2. So putting them on the number line automatically puts them in order. So let's see, and the writing's right on there. Let me see if I can erase my writing so you can see it. And they came up with the same thing. So it's kind of a nice little trick, is to put them, plot them on a number line. So here, -11, if 0's right here, -11 would be down here. Then they'd have -4, then there'd be a -1. 0, I just used that as a reference. Positive numbers, we'd have 9, then we'd have 12. So to have them all, I got -11, I've got -4, -1, +9, +12. So I have them all. Let's see what they do. -11, -4, -1, 9, and 12. This one, again, I think about owing money. What would be the one that would be the least amount of money in your pocket? Would be you have to owe somebody 99. Then any owing is always first, -6, so we get all the negatives. The bigger the negative, the less it's worth. We go to 0, and then we just start counting up from there. 16, and then 44. Let's see what they got. -99, -60, 0, 16, and 44. So we go to example number 2, which is finding the absolute value. And this one has eyeglasses. Ooh, I'm glad I don't have to read that chart. It's a little blurry for me. Eyeglasses. An eyeglass prescription is given as a positive or a negative number. A prescription for a person who is farsighted is positive. A prescription for a person who is nearsighted is negative. The greater the absolute value, the stronger the prescription. Which prescription is stronger, -3 or 2? Well, remember, absolute value is the distance a number is from 0. So -3, if we were to think about them on a number line, let's go ahead and I'll plot those. There's 0, 1, 2, -1, -2, -3. Okay, -3 is right here. +2 is right here. Remember, absolute value in our definition is the distance that number is from 0. So let's count how far this is to get to 0. 1, 2, 3. So the absolute value of -3 is 3. And how far does it take for 2 to get to 0? 1, 2. So the absolute value of 2 is 2. So let's go back to that statement. The greater the absolute value, the stronger the prescription. So since -3 has a greater absolute value, -3 is the strongest prescription. So there's that example right there. And I had, if you would look in your book on page 58, the absolute value, there's a section there where it's highlighted. It gives a really nice description. Remember the apps, I just want to remind you that when you see this, if it's written like this, they are asking you right there, what is the absolute value of -3? You would say 3. If it's like this, they are asking you what is the absolute value of 2, which is 2. So I want you to recognize what the absolute value signs are, because those will show up in your lessons coming up. And so here's their solution. You notice they're using those absolute value signs, which are nice to recognize what those mean. And the prescription of -3 is stronger because 3 had the bigger absolute value. So example 3, write the opposite of the integer. So opposites, remember, they have one is positive and one is negative. That's how I do it. So what's the opposite of 5? -5. Easy. That's easy. What's the opposite of -12? +12. And what is this? What's the opposite of the absolute value of -9? Well, first you have to find out. What is the absolute value of -9? +9. What's the opposite of +9? -9. That's kind of confusing, but this is really +9. This is a way to write +9. Because the absolute value of -9 is 9. The opposite of the absolute value of -9 is -9. Whew, that's confusing, but that's, if you look at how I wrote it, should be pretty straight for you. All right, guided practice. Write the absolute value and the opposite of the integer. So if you have to do this on your paper, make sure you tell me which is which, okay? So first, the absolute value, let's just write it AV, of -16 is +16. The opposite of -16 is +16. So both of those happen to come out positive. Okay. So let's do number 5. Let me get rid of my erase. All right. The absolute value of 140 is 140. That's because it's 140 steps away to 0. The opposite of +140 is -140. Let's see if they agree with this. The opposite is negative. The absolute value is the positive. Very good. -1. The absolute value of -1, it is 1 step away from 0. The opposite of -1 is +1. So both of those came out to be 1. Write the absolute value and the opposite of the integer. So this is our guided practice. I don't know why it's guided practice for numbers. I think I lost these. I don't know if these are numbered right or not, guys. Look at that. I don't know what happened there. So go ahead and do those guided practice. I don't know if I can go back. Let me see if I can. Let me see here what happened. Let me go back to this one. For some reason, oh, it skipped all of them. I'll write them in. Okay, number 4. is negative 16. So you have to write absolute value is 16 and the opposite is positive 16. So both of those come out to be 16. Number 5, this is the guided practice. Number 5 is 140. Did I just do these? It seems like I just did these. Mrs. Bivens is losing her mind. Look, I did. Did I not do the example? And I did the example. Oh, I'm losing my mind. Sorry. We already did these. So, let's just do the last one. I won't write them. I don't need to write that. Sorry about that. So 0. What's the absolute value? How far is 0 from 0? 0. And what's the opposite of 0? 0. 0 does not have a negative. You can never have a negative 0. 0's just 0. All right, that looks like it's it for this 2.1 for 8th grade. We'll see you next time.